We were at Tottenham on Saturday, James, and Thomas Frank's getting booed by the fans for his changes. But Tottenham fifth at the moment, fifth in the table, or sixth maybe. Man United I think only 3 teams have scored more goals than Man United this season. And last season that was their issue; they couldn't score a goal. So a lot of teams are improving on last season. And Spurs are improving because they're much higher up the table. But it's still a state of flux, isn't it? What are these teams about? What are Tottenham about? What are Man United about? I don't think any of the wiser after the game on Saturday.
Well, from a Tottenham perspective, I just feel as though the Europa League win didn't solve the existential crisis that there is at that club, which was what it got distilled down into last season, was how much do you want to win a trophy? Are you prepared to sacrifice your entire season to win any sort of trophy? And Ange Postecoglou's answer to that was yes, I am. And he will feel vindicated by the tens of thousands of people who line the streets and on the bus parade and all of that. And it felt as though what should have happened then was, okay, we've been waiting 17 years, they've won a trophy, that's now put to bed. Now they want to go and win the big ones. They want to go and challenge for the league, they want to go and challenge for the Champions League. And I think Thomas Frank sort of inherited that, and yet at the same time, that same fan base doesn't want to see the sort of pragmatic football that it can take to get there. They want to see style, they want to see swagger. You can hear the grumblings of when the team doesn't quite know how to attack and they're not maybe as brave or as bold in possession as they were last season under Postecoglou, and you sort of think, well, what do you want? And you've got to have a little bit of patience with this, because it was a mess under Postecoglou at the end of last season, and that team was so imbalanced, and they had such a difficult summer. They didn't back Frank properly in the market. They botched the Gibbs-White deal. They botched the Eze deal, and they've got themselves to a point where they're trying to sort of bed in players while adjusting to Champions League level football and playing every 3 days. You've got a manager who hasn't experienced that either. They need a bit of time. And I have to say, I'm so surprised by just how on a knife edge it feels at Tottenham home games. And I know they've been used to going there and not seeing their team win for a year now. And I get that that's frustrating. You're in this fantastic stadium. You sort of, you're expecting the best and you don't get it. But for Thomas Frank to be in a position where his own substitutions are getting booed, when they're 1-0 down in a game that they're not playing very well in, but they're 1-0 down, I just feel like he's 2 years in, not sort of 3 or 4 months.
It kind of points to that kind of delusional nature of the fan base. They're singing champions of Europe. We know what they are. Well, they're not. PSG are the champions of Europe, and Spurs have never been champions of Europe. So, but if they're equating winning the Europa League with conquering Europe, then that's where there's a bit of a problem lies. And you're right about the whole Thomas Frank thing, booing him for his substitutions. I did think when I saw the Super Cup game against PSG at the start of the season that it will be very, very short honeymoon as soon as they stop winning games, because of the way that he plays, the long throw-ins, the long clearances from the goalkeeper.
But I was at that game, and they competed really well. It was a clever, mature European performance, and with ultimately attempting a means to an end. Now, of course, it ended quite Spursy because they threw it away and they lost it. But sometimes found a way to lose it.
We want to play a certain way.
Welcome to Spurs, Thomas Frank.
Tottenham, West Ham, we have to play a certain way, but over the years, it hasn't won many trophies. So it's like you said, they have to be more pragmatic and patient, but you didn't really see it.
No. And I mean, they've
got a lot of injuries as well. You have to name check the injuries, because I've forgotten them all, but you know better than I do.
Look, from an attacking sense, they've lost James Maddison probably for the whole season. They've lost Dejan Kulusevski for a long period of time. Richarlison was 13 games without a goal. Kolo they signed right at the end of the window. Xavi Simons, they signed right at the end of the window.
Missed out on Gibbs-White.
They missed out on Gibbs-White. They missed out on Eze. They've lost, and I think that's another thing that's underplayed, is that Heung-min Son for a decade was one of their go-to guys, along with obviously Harry Kane. And even though Son, was, and I say this with a heavy heart because I love him as a player, but he was a bit of a fading force in the last sort of year, 18 months perhaps at Spurs. But he would take that responsibility. He would be the go-to guy who would make something happen out of nothing, or he'd take the one chance that they would create. And so they've lost these players. Mohamed Kudus was another loss at the weekend, and Solanke's the other one we should mention as well.
There's a lot of players.
Dominic Solanke has not played since August, and he would be their starting centre forward.
So there's 5 or 6 first-team players that are missing.
What you're asking Thomas Frank to do is come into a new club and miss 3 probable starters and 2 players who've just arrived, one of whom in Kolo Muani was injured, and say, could you now play this fantastic free-flowing football, please? Oh, and also, can you be safe at the back, solid at the back, and not concede from set pieces? Thank you very much. In 3 months.
They're also 5th in the Premier League and unbeaten in the Champions League.
Well, as those fans were filing out of the stadium at full time, they were third. Now, I know it was the first game of the weekend and they were never going to drop down, but they were third.
So we all think that Spurs fans need to kind of have a bit of reality check and just have a bit of patience. Man United fans, I suggest that maybe there's a bit of optimism for a change. I mean, I think that they're a lot better than last season, but I do think that, again, we saw it at the weekend, that he's probably got about 7 or 8 players, Amram, that he can rely upon. Yeah. And as soon as he takes Casemiro off, Harry Maguire off, I think I posted on our blog at the time, 70 minutes, there could be trouble ahead here, because what happens when United take those players off, they concede goals, and Ugarte comes on, a couple of others come on, and they concede twice. So we also know there's going to lose Mbeumo, Ahmad, Mazraoui to the African Cup of Nations. I think United's progress really risks being kind of halted by the lack of depth going into the next month.
Yeah, they're going to struggle, particularly with those players that are going to the Africa Cup of Nations. You can't rely on Casemiro to play 90 minutes even once a week because he looks shattered after 70 minutes in most games.
Can we say, though, he was really good at Spurs? It's the first time I've seen him live for a while.
Yeah. He was great against Brentford a couple of weeks ago. Brighton, sorry. And then he goes off, and all of a sudden it goes from 3-0 to 3-2 in the blink of an eye.
Somebody posted a start at the weekend. When Casemiro's on the pitch this season, they've conceded 5 goals. Yeah. When he's not on the pitch, it's 15. And those 15 goals are basically in the 20 minutes at the end of games.
Is that to do, though, with how good Casemiro has been, or how big the gap is between Casemiro and Ugarte?
I think it's both. And Ugarte should be a lot better than that. He's played for PSG, Sporting Lisbon. He's a Uruguay international. Kobbie Mainoo was injured the weekend, but he comes nowhere close to the team at the moment. Yeah. They've got a massive problem there. And I don't know what happens, whether he might even consider Lisandro Martinez in that position when he comes back, because he can play in that role. I mean, that's another thing they've got to factor in. When he comes in, does that mean Luke Shaw plays out on the left wing back? So the progress they're making right now, because of his limited options, could be jeopardised by greater options in certain places.
They've got a decision to make with the January window coming up, because the choice either is you stick to your long-term plan, you've got long-term targets for the summer that they've probably been working on for the best part of a year, or do you recognise that you are risking another storm coming by losing these players? Do you go and do something in January to kind of see that off and risk a short-term signing not paying off and setting you back long-term?
Well, Oggy asked Amram about that after the game, and he didn't really answer the question, did he? It was we'll see, and it was quite sort of circumspect. I mean, this is a club that was supposed to be broke by Christmas.
Yeah.
And then have obviously spent considerable money in the summer. Have they got money to spend in January?
I don't think they've got a lot, because the word from Man United was that Omar Barada, the way that the window had been structured with players going out at certain times and coming in at certain times, that he had squeezed every last penny out of that window. One of the reasons why they waited for so long to do Stena Lammens, who was available all summer because Royal Antwerp needed the money apparently, that they had to wait to that point to bring Brunny in when Garnacho went to Chelsea, to have the money available to bring, and that was a €25 million signing. So you're not talking about £100 million player, you're talking about £21 million, which is peanuts really for Premier League transfers. So if he's squeezed every last penny out of that summer budget, that suggests that there isn't an awful lot of money available in January. Now, things could change. Maybe United go to Barcelona or Napoli and say, do you want to go and do your permanent deals for Højlund and Rashford early? Possibly. I'm sure that those two clubs would say no, because there's no pressure for them to do that. Maybe someone comes in for Ugarte. There's been talk of maybe clubs coming here. Mainoo, possibly Xerxes. There's interest from Italy. If you can bring in money from them, it's possible that there could be something available. But
yeah, I've been told that January's unlikely, that they're saving it all for the summer. But there's two things here. I mean, if you're Man United and you get to January and you're top 6, 7, you've got a chance to qualify for the Champions League, it might be a case of you have to spend some money. You have to spend the money to get over that line, because, I mean, you mentioned Xerxes, there's a potential outgoing. Now he is, that United are confident that if they were to get rid of him, they would get their money back or close to it from Italy. But, I mean, we're recording this on Monday. By Tuesday when we come out, we'll probably have an idea what's happened to Benjamin Šeško. Yeah. And so to answer the question that I asked Amber at the weekend, he did mention Šeško's situation in that answer, in the sense that they don't know what the situation is. It's a knee injury. We've seen the footage of Šeško leaving the ground on Saturday, and he looks in a bad way. So if Šeško's missing for a period of time, then Xerxes has to stay. So that's an option that you can't look at getting rid of. And Xerxes is not good enough to play. I mean, Šeško's not quick, but Xerxes is even slower, and he doesn't score any goals. So, United have got problems, but I do think
it's a risk. Any January signing comes with an element of risk, and I think that United are in a situation, particularly with their budget and what they want to do long term, that they just don't want to take any risks. Now,
But is it not a risk?
Well, yeah,
not spending money in
well,
January.
it is because you get to March and you could be 12th in the table because
that happened last season.
Yeah,
they decided not to sign a striker last January because they wanted to get to the summer, and it killed them because they couldn't score a goal.
Yeah,
Højlund was just, he just caved in under the pressure.
It's going to be a really difficult balancing act for Amorim, for Barada, for Jason Wilcock, because obviously they're going to be opposing ends of this, because Amorim is always going to want more players. He said that to us in press conferences, says that you keep asking me, can we do something in the window? My answer is always going to be, I hope so, because I always want another option. Omar Barada is sat there with a balance sheet saying, well, hang on a minute, you probably want to sign a £100 million midfielder in the summer. Are you willing to take £30 million out of that to buy a short-term signing in January, and then you settle in for a £70 million midfielder in the summer?
But his answer to that would be, yes, because I will get us in the Champions League, and then the money that we need to spend. So that's the coach's gamble, isn't it? That he can say, if I can get this player in, we've got a greater chance of getting the Champions League and unlocking £100 million of the prize money, Premier League prize money. And I think, to be fair, I do think United, the hierarchy would look at it thinking, this is too big a chance to pass up. If they miss out on, it could be top 4, top 5 maybe for Champions League. I know that English clubs haven't been as great this year, but if fifth is a Champions League spot, then United have to target that.
I just think the overriding message that came back to us from United during the summer when they were signing players was caution, which is why they went for Premier League proven players, because they thought that there was less risk associated with those players. Now, if you're talking about eliminating risk, doing business in January, any January business is not what you should be doing.
I think United are doing better than I thought they'd be at this point. Just canvas shoes, guys. You saw them at the weekend. Do you think they're ahead of where you thought they'd be by this stage of the season?
I expected more from them this year because I thought they'd bought well, and they've got 3 weeks. They should be making the most of those opportunities. I would say, having seen them live for the first time in a while, I would say that the midfield looks better balanced than I think everybody sort of assumed that the Casemiro, Bruno Fernandes central midfield just could not work. Well, they are making it work. They are more compact. Spurs couldn't play through them as easily as I think. They've been able to work on that. You can see some improvement in that in the training weeks that they've had. So I'd say they probably are a little bit ahead of where I'd expect them to be.
I've genuinely been relatively impressed with United, given where they were at the end of last season.
And the start they made.
Yeah, and the start they made. They had a really tough start in terms of Premier League fixtures this season. They've beaten Chelsea, they've gone to Spurs and drawn. I think if you're coming away from a game like Spurs away and being disappointed with a point, that shows you that you're probably, the expectation is back where it should be, possibly, because Spurs have had their number for a while now. I think the problem is going to, like you say, the problem comes when those players go to the Africa Cup of Nations. Possibly Šeško is injured for a while, and then you have to balance the risk about what you want to achieve this season compared to what you want to do long term.